logo's back up here behind us at the back of the stage. And Fulshear has 3 dates on the logo signifying major steps in our history: 1824, 1900, and 1977. The last date signifies our incorporation as a general law type A city in 1977. 1824 signifies the original land grant to Churchill Fulshear, one of Stephen F. Austin's old 300. And 1900 signifies the platting of the old town area of Fulshear by the San Antonio and Aransas Pass Railroad. Now that Fulshear has surpassed that magic 5,000 population mark, we have an opportunity to take the next step in the progress of Fulshear's great history. You might say, well, what's the difference between general law and home rule? And you may get a little bit more information on this, but I talked to a group of Girl Scouts just a couple of weeks ago, and I tried to, again, make it make sense to me, but to them also. So general law means you can only perform tasks specifically authorized under our local government code by the Texas legislature. So our hands are very restricted in many aspects. On the other hand, if we convert to a home rule charter, Fulshear will be allowed to operate and take any necessary actions as a city unless that action is specifically forbidden by the state or the federal government. So we have a whole new field of play as a city in our rules and our operations. Now changes are coming to Fulshear faster and faster with each passing day. We're fortunate, though, to have leaders like the council and others today and in the past that have great vision. We have a comprehensive plan, a subdivision ordinance, signing ordinances, masonry ordinances, and zoning that all work together to provide a high quality and sustainable environment for development and growth. Now we have the opportunity coming up before us to possibly, in my mind, add a 4th date to that placard up there, the date 2016, and that would signify our transition from general law to home rule charter. The change from general law to home rule status does not occur every day. You don't read about it in the news every day. We've appointed a dedicated committee of 13 individuals who take their role and responsibility very seriously. The Home Rule Charter Commission represents all geographic and socioeconomic parts of the city. I've sat through several of the Charter Commission meetings, as my fellow council members have, and the discussions are focused and thought-provoking with a great deal of in-depth discussions. If you're on the Charter Commission, I know several of you are here tonight, I'd like you to stand at this time and just thank you for your service. So if you would stand so people can see who you are. The Charter Commission tonight wants to have, first of all, buy-in from the City Council, and they want buy-in from the public as they move towards finalizing the charter. Therefore, they have requested that we provide them this opportunity for a presentation and overview where the Charter Commission is in their work today. They're soliciting, hopefully, council feedback tonight or following this meeting so that they can finalize their documents with your input and present it to the voters in May of 2016. So with that, I'll, let's see here. Just take the comments first. Yeah, let's go, before I open it up to the chairman of the Charter Commission, we did have a few comments on the charter, and let's work our way through those, and then we'll turn it back over. So first, Randy Katz.
So good evening, Mr. Mayor and the City Council. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Randy Katz, 4.5-year resident of Cross Creek Ranch in Fulshear, and I'd like to share my views of the Charter Commission's recent debate regarding the at-large council position's geographic restrictions. I urge you to think long and hard about the legal, political, and community impact of what this commission is trying to do. I deeply disagree with the effort to restrict the choice of master plan community citizens of Fulshear to their chosen representatives. I, and a number of residents along with me, have already been in contact with voting rights and 14th Amendment attorneys who are confident that this new effort to restrict at-large representation based on the character of their chosen neighborhood will not survive a legal challenge. In addition, I should remind you that voting rights cases generally compel the loser to pay for the proceedings, such that the effort to restrict representation could become a very costly mistake for the city. I also urge the council to think about the political impact of the Charter Commission's actions. I remind you that the charter needs both council and voter approval. While I have my doubts that this charter can pass the current council, I should also point out that you're asking residents of Cross Creek Ranch, Fulbrook on Fulshear Creek, and other master plan communities to approve a charter that dramatically limits their access to run for elected office in Fulshear in a way that not all city residents would be restricted. This would seem to be counter to their self-interest and is unlikely to pass. I vow tonight that I and Cross Creek residents who share my opinion will work tirelessly to raise awareness of the unfairness of this provision if it comes to a citizen's vote. Finally, and most importantly, I wonder the intent of the committee's effort. Why would they want to create a two-tier citizen structure in Fulshear? Individual qualifications aside, what makes the judgment of a resident of Bodark or downtown prima facie better than that of a Cross Creek Ranch or Fulbrook resident based solely on where they choose to live? Arguments you'll hear tonight regarding geographic or racial diversity fail when confronted by the fact that neighbors or members of the same ethnic group could still be at-large council members as long as they don't live in a master plan community. Left to conclude that this effort is an attempt to preserve power for the residents specifically excluded from the resident and restrict power from those who moved to this city since the opening of its newer communities. That level of divisive politics does nothing to improve our city. I strongly urge the council to instruct the Home Rule Commission to abandon its effort at restricting the at-large council districts based on the type of neighborhood in which our citizens choose to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And just for the record, Mr. Katz has submitted comments. Our last Home Rule Charter Commission meeting, those were read into the record by Councilmember Messick, and the commission did discuss those intently, and they have that in their hands. Ed Prinick.
I wanted to address for everyone, including the council, certain statements that are being made as whether they're direct or implied, veiled, express attacks on the Charter Commission and their efforts to come up with what I believe to be a democratic process of addressing our transition from to Home Rule. There are statements that were made tonight as well as at other times that attack the Charter Commission and their ability to do their work in a democratic way, and I believe based upon false information being presented. For example, there are statements made about what needs to pass for this for the transition, or with the transition being statements about the council having to vote as well as the citizenship voting. Well, the Texas Local Government Code makes very clear in Section 9.03 that the charter prepared by the Charter Commission shall be submitted to the qualified voters of the municipality at the election. It's not up to the council necessarily to vote on this. It's up to the citizens to vote on it. My point of what I wanted to address for everyone here tonight is attacks on the democratic process through veiled, direct, express, or indirect threats are improper. And that I would like to give kudos to the Charter Commission for doing their work in a democratic way and to come up with whatever the solution ultimately is to be voted on by the citizens and not be influenced by direct or indirect attacks on our democratic process.
Thank you. Did I overlook anyone else? Okay. With that, we'll, at this time I'd like to, I don't know, CJ, did you have some introductory comments, or Grady, did you want to make introductory comments on behalf of the Charter Commission?
Well, I'll address the council in saying that our mayor has selected a group of well-qualified and very serious interested individuals, residents of Fulshear, who've all worked tirelessly and a lot of hours on a number of days and evenings, including World Series, where some guys were very concerned about missing games. But we We have taken this very seriously. We will continue to do so until we can prepare a document that is in the best interests of all of the residents of Fulshear. I live in Cross Creek. I recognize the concerns of a major community like ours, but we also have to majorly understand what impact a significant population base can have relative to the 14th Amendment. I wish I were an expert on districting, but I'm not. I'm not sure that animal truly exists. But our attorney is here to try to address any questions you may have. We thank you for your support. We'll continue to draft this document as the best possible document we can present to the citizens of Fulshear. And with that, Grady, if you have any comments or questions that you may want to ask.
Charter Commission meetings are quite as exciting as council meetings. Three things I wanted to address. Y'all have it's a copy of the survey from Blodgett's Texas Home Rule Charters. We mocked this up to show you topically what the Charter Commission has already done. It's a 30,000-foot view. The Charter Commission is within about 3 meetings of completing its work. It will complete it most likely in in December, perhaps the first week or 2 of January. Since Baylor's not going to the playoffs, then we'll have and I will go through these and explain some of them to you and hit those topics as to why the Charter Commission voted a certain way. The Charter Commission can answer those questions. It's been a very good commission. It's worked well together, as was stated at the very first meeting. Everybody has a voice. Nobody has a veto. The votes have not been unanimous, and there have been strong opinions on stuff I wouldn't think there would be a strong opinion on, and on other stuff it's been unanimous. So it's been all over the board. Lastly, before I get to the survey, I wanted to address a couple of other things and some concerns that I've heard. One, when you are elected to your council term, other than your death, there is nothing anybody can do about your terms. You were there for those 2 glory-filled years that you served. If the charter is approved by the voters in May of 2016 and you have an election at the same time, and so I think the mayor and over on this side of the table is the 2016 elections, y'all are going to serve 2 years. You're going to serve to 2018. There's nothing that the charter or anything else can do about that. Then there is a transition period that it goes through as you meld in, because it's not overnight that you become home rule, but your council has to change. There's one city that I represented that had a 5-member council elected at large. They went to a 7-member or 6-member council, and the mayor voted. It's taking 4 to 5 election cycles for that all to work out, so that everybody, they also increased their term to 3 years. So it's taking 4 to 5 election cycles for those all to play out, so that you have even number running on odd years and an even number running on even years, and that they all have 3-year terms. Likewise, the transition, and we have not addressed that in the Charter Commission yet. That's going to be one of the latter ones. It will take time for those to blend in, any changes that the charter would require. So whatever you are elected for is what you're going to get. Secondly, there is a question of procedurally how it goes after the Charter Commission finishes its work. Finishes its work is a term of art, because that triggers basically a 40-day time period that council has to act on. There may have been a misconception that council has a veto over the charter. It does not. It is required to, well, the local government code says it shall call an election. The council cannot instruct the charter commission to do anything. It's an up or down. I mean, it's there. And it's really not an up or down because what it says, because it says it shall call an election because it's your first charter. It goes out to the voters like that. Now, that said, Richmond did it, Bellevue did it. You can look at most other councils or cities that go to a charter election. They usually put it on the agenda for council, quote, approval and calling an election. Because the last thing anybody wants is a charter election with opposition from council. That just doesn't do anybody any good. The Charter Commission does its work, and while it can, in bankruptcy it's called a cram down, when you cram down a plan down a debtor's throat. We don't want a cram down situation here. We want your feedback. The Charter Commission wants your feedback so they can make adjustments. You know, it's their call, but they can make adjustments if there is something that y'all are vehemently opposed against. So with that, let me just briefly go over that. Now, I have a cheat sheet that y'all don't have, and I will make this available to you a little later, but it's my spreadsheet of every charter of every city in Fort Bend County. And it compares what the Charter Commission is proposing to all the other cities. But this is a more straightforward, simple survey. So let's go over it.
Grady, you just gonna hit the highlights on this?
I'm just going to hit the highlights. I saw the length of the agenda.
I think most council members have been attending the meeting, so they're aware of some of those. I know I've missed some, but, so hit the highlights, and if there's a specific area that they would like to ask questions on, please raise that question.
The two big things so far. One, y'all are 5 at-large elected members. But let me back up one thing. This is not a formal presentation. This is an informal presentation. Get your feedback. January, we'll come back with the actual charter and present it to the council. This is the time for input. So, two major changes. One, y'all are a 5, that's the Texas plural, y'all, are a 5-member council elected at large without place. Now, you can have at large by place and you can have at large without place. So what that means when y'all three run, it's the 3 highest vote getters. It's by plurality, it's not majority. If you had it by place, and if Ramona and Aaron were place 4 and place 5, then it would just be those individual places. So candidates would run for that place and it would be a majority vote, whoever wins that particular place. Y'all don't have that. It is by at large without place. What the Charter Commission has proposed is increasing, well, taking it from 5 at large to 5 districts and 2 at large. And what that means is with the districts, and I'm not a redistricting expert, I will not be drawing the districts. Y'all will have to hire whoever you hire to go draw the districts, and they're going to pull data. And I'll tell you this much. You don't have good data yet. The Census Bureau in 2010 did not have the correct city limit lines. So how many people were in Fulshear in 2010 is kind of unknown, and they're going to have to build that database. And also, Fulshear, up through the last election, was 1 precinct. Now, the mayor's told me that they're going to have a new precinct. So you'll have at least 2 precincts, and you'll be able to pull, or they will be able to build a database on that. So 5 districts, single-member districts, where residency is required. Age 21, and you can't owe taxes, and you can't be indebted to the city. Typical stuff. On top of that, they've added 2 at-large districts. Currently, they are completely unrestricted. There's concern that Mr. Katz spoke about whether you can restrict those districts by geographic restriction. You could create 2 super districts in the city or wards. It still is, the whole city votes on it, it's just where you live in the district, kind of like a regular district, on where you vote. Now, the object of the commission was to give the council as many options and flexibility as possible to be able to deal with any challenges to the charter. And by that I mean whether the DOJ comes in, because they still enforce Section 2, 1 man, 1 vote, or 1 person, 1 vote, sorry. And we just don't have to pre-clear under Section 5. So giving the if they voted, and they may not vote it, but if they voted, it would give flexibility to if there was a challenge, or if the NAACP came in, or if the Mexican American Defense League, like they sued Fulshear, came in, it would give council that flexibility to come in and say, all right, we don't have to throw out the charter, we don't have to go for an amendment, or we don't have to have a lawsuit. We can simply restrict a district or fine-tune it, is the best way to put it. So you're going from 5 at large to 5 districts, 2 at large, and a mayor. Those will be blended in over time. For instance, these 3 on this table, they will come in, they will serve 2 years at their at-large positions after the election. When those other 2 at-large positions open up, there's going to be a transition period. On this side of the table, your term ends in 17? Yeah, 17. So then you will have a choice of whatever positions are open to run for at that time. Where those districts are, I don't know. I have no data, or not no data. The second thing is moving to the city manager form of government. And the best way to view this is you have Houston, which is not a city manager form of government. It is run by the mayor, appointed by the mayor, dictated by the mayor. It is the mayor doing it and his chief of staff. Dallas is a city manager form of government. They bring in a professional, quote unquote, city manager. One little dig that I couldn't stand. With their masters in public administration or whatever they do in that classroom. And they are the chief executive of the city. They run the day-to-day activities of the city. And I'll tell you right now, my experience, the change in that is that city council is not involved in the day-to-day running of the city. That means with employees, suggesting employees, terminating employees, dig the ditch here, string the lights over here. That's all run by the city manager. The pressure comes to the city manager. If you don't string those lights here, CJ, you're out of here. I mean, and that's the kind of pressure that it's done. Almost every city that is a suburb of Houston has a city manager form of government. I'm just telling you. There are B through H, whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other home rule cities in Fort Bend County. Other than, no, Richmond has it. Other than Stafford, I think all of them are city manager run governments. I can go through the rest of it, but you can read the survey. And the commission would appreciate any feedback you can give.
For feedback, maybe that council would have offered, if you have anything later, I guess to send that to CJ, and then let him collect those, and he'll pass them along to Lynn, who will distribute them to the commission.
This is, I mean, it's so detailed and involved for the workshop.
Sure. Okay.
We're doing this for the meeting, and it's long. 10 pages.
82 points in this survey, right?
Mhm.
That's a standard survey for the home rule charter.
That TML put out
Mhm.
some years ago, yes.
Okay. And I noticed that some of them, they're not circled yet. I haven't really had a chance to review this, but I mean, I noticed some of them are still empty. Does it mean that you're still in the process of finalizing that?
Either they're in the process of finalizing those, or it doesn't apply. For instance, like, under authority of mayor, appoint department heads with approval of council, number 14. It doesn't apply, because he doesn't appoint department heads.
And something, residency length requirement 1 year, is that 1 year from filing day, 1 year from election day, 1 year from?
I'll have to go back and check the notes. Byron, is it election or filing?
I think it's an election. I think it's the beginning of the term.
Beginning of the term. Beginning of the term.
I personally don't have anything, we haven't gone through this yet, this is a new document to me, so I haven't had the time to look at it, I apologize to the members that are here, but I just want to appreciate you guys for stepping up and volunteering for the Charter Commission. I know it's a lot of time, a lot of effort you guys put in there, so personally just want to thank you.
And tagging on Jeff's, I encourage our public, you know, I know it's a lot to come out and see this in progress, but this really is like the Continental, the Continental Congress in action. The debate that goes on between the 13 members who have, before they ever come into the room, they've spent lots of time reading all the different materials that our city attorney has provided to them, listening to expert opinions, hearing all of this. It is really your government in action. The debate that happens at the table, like you said, all the votes are not unanimous. There's opinions expressed on both sides, but it gives a feel and flavor for what, from each part of the city, that people come and participate in the discussion, and it's government in action. It's an incredible thing to watch. The 13 members are truly dedicated. They are truly stepping up and serving each one of you, and so I also want to extend, on behalf of council, our appreciation for each of you taking time out of your lives and schedules to do this, and I'm excited to see what you bring to council, and even though we don't get to vote on it, I'm excited to be able to present that to the voters, because it's truly coming from the people.
Our next meeting is Monday. The special usually meet on Tuesdays, but it's too close to Thanksgiving, so we moved it to Monday, right here, same back channel.
Marie, I'm sorry, just to piggyback off of something, I'm not sure that I'm clear. Are you saying that the city council will not get to vote on this, to go to the voters? Because I was in conversation with TJ and the mayor, I was under the impression that this will go to the city council for a vote. I highly respect everybody who did a lot of work in the past, I want to say since August, and I attended as many as I could. But I really would like to understand that, because I was under the impression that the city council will have a vote on the home rule charter. Whether we're going to send it to up and down vote, this has been discussed the whole time.
It's clear that the council cannot pick and choose which part of the charter they like or don't like, because this is an appointed charter commission. When they complete their work, they present it to council. Council has 40 days to call the election, and the law said you shall call an election. So it sounds like a typical lawyer answer. The answer is both yes and no. It's yes, that it is, you get to vote on it, but the vote is to call the election. And the local government code makes it practically ministerial that you must call the election.
That is a little bit different than it was presented to us earlier, so that's why I was mentioning it.
Well, I wanted to make that clear tonight, that it's why we need the feedback so that we can fine-tune this to those. It's an up or down vote, but it's basically saying you have to call the election.
So our vote, if I understood, because I read the government code, section 9.003, says that we shall receive the charter from the commission and either call an election within 40 days of when it's presented to us at the next uniformly scheduled election. And the first section of 9.003 says, we shall present it to the voters for a majority vote.
The charter prepared by the Charter Commission shall be submitted to the qualified voters of the municipality, blah, blah, blah.
So that means if they have to come to a consensus on a document that they'll present to us.
Correct. Which we are surmising that will be at your January meeting, which dovetails in for a May election. Otherwise, if you don't make the May election, you're gonna make a November election, which is not really a city type of election, except if you live in Houston.
Grady, if I might, we want to create a document that you want to vote for in your mind. So review the survey and give us feedback if you see some areas that you're concerned about, and we'll try to address it.
Thank you.
And if council wants a further workshop or discussion on